Hello and welcome to Courageous Conversations.
We're here to talk honestly about race, faith, and what it really means to love our neighbor at all costs.
Each and every episode, we are going to sit down with friends and leaders from across Kansas City to share stories. We're going to ask hard questions and we'll laugh a little bit along the way.
To unite people, unite neighborhoods, and eventually unite KC. Let's jump into today's conversation.
Well, hello and welcome to another podcast of Courageous Conversations. I'm Ray Jarrett, and I'm here with Gary. Gary, say hello.
Glad to be with you guys today. We're going to be talking about some things that we all trip over, and they're trigger words. But before we get to that, let me just say that thanks for subscribing to the Courageous Conversations Unite KC podcast. If you would, please like it. Look for the subscribe so you can get the reminders, and then share it.
Yeah, Gary, this was bound to happen. We were looking for different topics and different people to talk to on our podcast. And we had a situation where somebody told us, I got up to speak and I was noticing people in the audience, and this person in the audience said, as soon as you said that word, I was done. I didn't even want to hear anything else that you had to say. And then we have a meeting with our staff every week, and we got an opportunity to basically talk about one trigger word, and we might as well start with that one.
We did. Yeah, it just came right up in the conversation.
It did. We had a good conversation about it too, I thought.
Yeah.
So that word is privilege, and sometimes it's accompanied with a modifier called white privilege.
Yes.
But apparently, when we went on our Dividing Lines bus tour, a person told one of the presenters that they didn't believe in the word white privilege.
Right.
And so,
and of course, it was a white person who said that.
So it was, and then a black person who I happen to know basically said, "Yeah, I don't believe in it either." And it just goes to say that maybe we need to explore that word a little bit before we just start throwing it around in common vernacular and to describe people who we don't even know.
Right. And I think that's a really good place to start, because with all words, any trigger words, you have to remember that words are best understood in context, and that they all have a bit of a nuance around them. If we could stay curious about what people mean when they say certain words, it would be very helpful to us. I've had the word used to my face about white privilege, so maybe we start with that word.
Yeah, tell me how that made you feel.
Well, it took me back a little bit, because the first feeling I had about it was another way of saying I was prejudiced, which was another word we can talk about later perhaps. Right. But I also had to stop at the moment, because I've had some thoughts before that particular instance about white privilege, and I think that there's a reason people would say that there's white privilege. I may not be acting as if I'm without responsibility, but I also can choose to act with responsibility. And so therefore, just because I'm white doesn't mean that I'm acting with white privilege. But let me back up to say I do understand why people might say that. I remember a black leader saying one time, whites sometimes are born on third base and they think they hit a triple. And as I thought about that, just reflected on it, I do think that there are times in life where some people have a greater advantage than other people. It isn't always because they're white. It actually could be, you could substitute other cultures in there or other classes in there, and you still could make the same statement. But that when that happens, we certainly should have a sense of gratitude for who we are, where we started from, whether it's small or whether it's middle or whether it's at the top, so to speak. We need an identity that really is based, I believe it's based in Jesus, based in the identity that God loves us and created us, and every one of us is a unique masterpiece. And he loves and cares for us. He gives us all different opportunities of where we start our life. It's the cards we're dealt, I think I heard you say
yes, it
one,
is.
one time. And being comfortable in our own shoes helps a lot with that. And when I can reflect there, I can have a sense of gratitude for what God has done. And then I can move forward in that by just assuming that the person who might be saying I have white privilege maybe just means from their experience, I had more advantages in the beginning. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm prejudiced, doesn't mean I'm irresponsible with it. In fact, I can use whatever privilege I have, and you can use whatever privilege you have to serve others. So I think the word privilege to me isn't an offensive word, but it's an invitation to have a conversation.
You know, it reminds me of a story, but then again, I'm at the age where everything reminds me of a story. But
that is one of the things I like about you. It's never dull.
Here it
never
comes.
dull.
Well, when I start repeating them, that's when you need to worry.
Okay.
So, but I was in a leadership position at a company, and this was something that just really slapped me in the face. And I can actually recall a couple of things that happened, but I remember when that phrase came out, white privilege, and we just happened to be talking about it in our staff meeting. And after the staff meeting was over, my finance director came up to me and said, you know, I don't want you to ever say that I have white privilege, because I know, based on what you've told us, that you've had way more privilege than I will ever have. And I asked her to kind of tell me. She goes, well, you came from a 2-parent home. You got a chance to go to college. You had a business. I mean, she just went on and on with some of these things that, like you said, were clearly advantages that were afforded to me by the blessings that came into my life. And I realized that from her perspective, I mean, having come from a broken home and never got to go to college and just all these other things, you could add them up, that she lived a completely different life. And she said, so you tell me where my white privilege is at. Right. She goes, so what do I call you? Black privilege? And But I think the word that we bantered about in our staff meeting yesterday and came to the conclusion is that whatever privilege you have a responsibility. Yeah. And so I feel very responsible if I've, this is just me, everybody is different. But if I'm sitting with a pocket full of money for whatever reason, maybe it's because you finally paid me back that money I loaned you, and I see somebody who is in need, I feel a responsibility to use that privilege that I have with that pocket full of money to help out. Right. And so, I could be upset at, my baseball player friend who made it to the major leagues and say that, you should use your privilege to get me in the leagues. But I mean, it's an advantage and people are all made different. They're all uniquely made and created by God. And, we all throw that term around that everybody's got a superpower. And sometimes that's a thing that most people don't realize is something that they could take advantage of, so that they don't put themselves in a position to feel like they're less than. Right. And a lot of times, if we're honest, and I'll throw it back to you, when we talk about that privilege, we're talking about position, we're talking about money, we're talking about status, class, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I think with great responsibility, great privilege comes great responsibility. Right. I think Spider-Man.
Yeah. him and my mom.
Right. So if we do have any kind of privilege, to me, it's just more opportunity to serve. Mm-hmm. But I do want to say that when I think about privilege, one of the things that gripped my heart the most, Ray, was I had a speaker one time who was talking about a video, and they showed it inside this training time that they were doing. And it broke my heart. Mm-hmm. And I've forever will remember this video. Mm-hmm. And the video was made up had about 20 questions in it, and there probably were 15 between middle school age and college age, boys and girls out on a field. They all started at the same place. And then the speaker began to read through these questions and ask them questions like, did you come from a two-parent home? Did your parents give you a car? If you needed to borrow money, did you have someone in the family you could ask for money? They went through just a series of fairly innocuous questions. None of them were like required math or geometry to figure out. Mm-hmm. But people would take one step forward if this was available to them and one step backward if it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the 20 questions, the people had sorted themselves from some who were way in the front to some who were way in the back. When it ended, most of the white kids were in front. Mm-hmm. It wasn't all white kids that were in front. Most of the black kids were in back. It wasn't all black kids who were in back. There were other races, I think several Hispanics in there. But here's what I thought by that. Number one, it's not a scientific study, so it's not true in every case every time. But it really made me think, so what if I did need a loan? Mm-hmm. Do I have a relative I could go to who would help me out? Or what if I needed to get credit? Or what if I needed, just fill in the blank.
Yeah. Do
I have resources available to me? There was one of the questions was like, if you got a speeding ticket, is there someone you could go to who might plead your case? Then maybe they get that dismissed, or you can hire a lawyer versus a person who can't hire a lawyer. And maybe they, start down another track, mm-hmm. things like that. And it just made me think of how blessed all of us are at some level or another.
Right.
And before I get offended because someone uses the word privilege, I probably should take the time to understand more about their life and why they would even use that word, mm-hmm. or what does that word mean to them. So it was really it was thought-provoking to me.
We'll hit this a little bit more. I just want to ask a question of you that's been asked of me, but as a person who may have more privileges than another person, do you feel like it's your responsibility, because we use that word, to use that privilege to help somebody less fortunate or who may not have the same opportunity?
I think that's a great question. Mm-hmm. And I would say yes and no.
Yeah. Okay. That's
so
good.
Yes, in the sense that I need to be available to do what I can do. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like it's my responsibility to save the world, and that I know I can't do that.
Right.
So the way I actually deal with that on a daily basis is trying to stay open to the Spirit of God as He would lead me in different situations, and then stay open to the people that I'm around, and not be closed. Mm-hmm. Like it may be that I feel like I should give someone some money. In fact, I often carry money around in my wallet to help in certain situations. Mm-hmm. And so I don't feel responsible to give it to every person I see at a roadside with a sign that says needs help. And by the way,
right.
they aren't all one race.
That's right.
They're all different races. There's men and women, young and old. But if I did feel led to do that, I would help somebody. And I want to keep my spirit soft and open. Like if I could help, I would help.
Man, and that just points back to a bigger principle, which is when it's in your make sure if I can kind of quote this right, when it's in your ability to help, you should help, and that's a biblical principle.
And when you do it to the least of these, you've done it to me.
That's right.
What Jesus said.
Yeah, and I just I'll end with this. There was a small group that we were doing with a guide that we got from the underground. And the lady started crying, and she goes, I guess I'm just guilty of not helping people when I have white privilege, because I've been in situations where people are being mistreated and I didn't speak up. But she said, but the thing that you don't know about me is that I'm painfully shy. I don't speak up for myself.
Right.
And I just don't have it in me to be that confrontational. So, we kind of lightened her load for her and stuff. But I think it's just really important for people, as we in the conversation on the word privilege, to just say, look, do what we've done, which is have a conversation.
Right.
And come to a point of understanding.
Yeah. Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Sometimes, and this, I think some white people might be more guilty of saying this than others. I've heard the term all my life long about, well, you do have opportunity. You can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. But not everybody has boots.
That's right.
It's
cruel.
And it is cruel, and it's kind of thoughtless. And it goes to the opposite point of what I think is where I would want to end this in my thinking is that we just don't know unless we ask.
That's it.
Like these words we're going to talk about today can provoke curiosity in us, and they can cause us to ask questions. Like maybe the best question is not to just blow it off if someone accuses me of white privilege, or even just to accept it, but to say, what do you mean by that? Can we talk about that? I'm curious what's going through your mind, because we're talking about courageous conversations, right?
That's it. That's right. Well, here's another term, and it could be very painful. Again, you could be accused of it no matter whether you're black, white, or Hispanic. But if somebody just says, well, you're prejudiced.
Right.
So what do you think about that one?
I've heard that one too.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I've been called prejudiced. And the sad part is I've been called prejudiced against white people and people by, that I'm prejudiced against black people.
Right.
And so neither is true.
Yeah.
But I think that what society has done with that word, because we talked about this, there's a nuance between using the word to describe your preferences for certain things, and then the act of actually despising, hating, and working against another group of people, ethnic group.
Right. What does drive me crazy about that word is that our culture has created a cancel culture where they really want to, it seems like, polarize people and put people in categories. And just one word sometimes can, if you use just the wrong word in the wrong situation, it may be even unintentional. You can all of a sudden be canceled. And then that was the experience I had the last time someone said I was prejudiced. They really didn't know me. They really didn't even know my thoughts. I had made some kind of comment about something. I don't even remember the context right now. And they said I'm prejudiced. And so if I wanted, I could line up all the ways that I try to work for racial harmony.
Sure.
Which to me inside, I'm going, now wait a minute.
I've got a good track record. Yeah.
I took my whole not-for-profit and put it underneath Unite KC. I chose to work for you, Ray.
Yes, you did.
And I felt like that God was calling me to contend for racial harmony. All those thoughts are going through my mind while I'm being
defending
accused,
yourself.
while I'm being accused of being prejudiced. But what I did was really determine not to be offended by that, and to understand that probably the word I used triggered some kind of response. And so rather than trying to defend myself, I wanted to lean into the actual issue. There's a phrase that I use in my life, and I think it's a helpful one, that when you see or feel pain, move toward it. And so when you move toward pain, that word tells me someone's probably been at some point in time, they've experienced prejudice.
Yeah.
And so even though I'm not, now I'm sensitive to the fact that this is an important thing to them, and they're probably self-protecting at that point in time, and maybe making a judgment that might be wrong. However, there might be good reason that they're feeling sensitive about that.
Yeah.
And so that's where I tried to go with that at that moment, and not just take offense at the word.
Well, we've done extensive amounts of talking to people. We at Unite KC have these forums where people get a chance to chat.
We do.
And one of the things we've discovered that is probably a more appropriate assessment of a situation is that there could be an area of ignorance where people just don't know.
True.
There could be fear, but more
blind
importantly,
spots.
That's it, blind spots. But misconceptions is probably a better word to describe most people that you might think are prejudiced.
Right.
And that's that you grow up a certain way, you grow up in a certain part of the country, And because you don't have a lot of interactions with a wide range of people, you may have bought into a whole book full of misconceptions about people that just aren't true. And so most people fall into that area of blind spots. And we found that very few people that we encounter anyway are, prejudiced, meaning that they are actively seeking the harm of another group
intent.
Of people. Yeah, there's definitely intent, and that they, where I look at you and I go, I don't want you to succeed. Right. I don't want to help you. I don't think you belong. Those kinds of things. And so, but yeah, a lot of people just we hear the word, I didn't know that. That phrase so many times. Yeah. So I've elected to take the word out of my vocabulary because I don't want to divide the room as soon as I say it.
It's a landmine.
It's definitely a landmine. So yeah.
I think that everybody, whether they know it or not, this could be known or unknown, has a certain set of values. Mm-hmm. They have a worldview. They have things that are important to them that they're trying to accomplish in their life. Mm-hmm. And they bring this set of things with them. It's their way of seeing the world. Mm-hmm. And if that's what you want to call prejudice, I could say we're all prejudiced at some level.
Right.
Where I differ with the way the word was used the day that it was used against me was I definitely had no ill intent for the other person, or might even just have misspoken accidentally in a way I said something that triggered something in them. But no, I don't think I'm prejudiced. But I will say that I do have a certain worldview and a way of looking at the world that might be different than yours. Mm-hmm. And that then needs to make me want to know more about you, to know what you think, why you think. And that leaning into that then builds a sense of common shared knowledge now that we have together, where if we just stay in our corners, we have this this unknown that probably just keeps us divided.
Yeah, and Gary, if you think about it, what is your intent when I sit here and I go, well, Gary, you're just prejudiced. Now, let's just use our brains and use our forward thinking. We're now our time travelers, so we can go into the future. What do you think that person's response is? First of all, most people are going to say, no, I'm not prejudiced. Yep. Most, you get 90-something%. Right. And then, have you built a bridge? Have you established a connection by calling somebody else prejudiced?
No.
Even if you feel like that by every notion and every determinant that you have in your sniff test that person is, isn't there a better way of trying to build a bridge to where maybe you could educate that person or eliminate a misconception?
What do you gain?
You don't gain
by using a word like that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Man, well, I feel like we're having a courageous conversation here.
So. We have them all the time.
We do.
We're just recording them now.
That's right. Now we're recording them. We got a whole list of what else should we kind of expose today?
Oh, I mean, there's really so many when you think about it. And unfortunately, a lot of them are brandied about in social media.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you could pick any kind of word like today. If you say the word Democrat, then there's a whole lot of things that people identify with that. Mm-hmm. If you say the word Republican, then there's a whole lot of things people identify with that. And the challenge that I have with both of those labels is they tend to put people in different camps. Mm-hmm. When most of the people that I know don't follow every point on the what the Republicans believe in their platform, mm-hmm. Or what the Democrats believe. Most people are more nuanced than they are just absolutely set. But it seems like today that that we really are quick to divide, quick to polarize, and you could use the word woke. So if someone says, you're woke, well, that we probably actually have different definitions of what that word is, depending on who we are.
Right.
And then, so just using that word sometimes will actually be an accusation that's thrown at someone, or someone may wear it proudly, but there's a difference between the two. And which is it?
Right.
You know.
And, I remember at the time when we made a list, we actually made a list of words that we needed to be careful with.
Right.
We don't avoid things, but we just wanted to make sure that there was a common vernacular and understanding if we're going to go use those. Like, for instance, I remember when critical race theory came out. Man, you talk about dividing the room instantly. But what we discovered was that most people didn't even know what it was. I mean, they had a social media education on what the word meant, when it was used, where it was used, and in what settings, and different things like that. But the big thing is that we are kind of like a test tube case, you and I, because when people see us walking down the street, they're gonna look at you, and this is the part that we gotta change about our society. They're gonna look at you, and they're just gonna assume about 10 things, and you haven't even opened your mouth yet.
Right.
They're gonna look at me, and they're gonna assume 10 or 12 things about me. And if you start your interaction, or if you just avoid talking to you or me because of those 10 things, you've already lost.
Right.
And as everybody knows, I mean, listeners, if you've met Gary, you've met a real friend. I mean, here's a man who will give you the shirt off his back, the money out of his pocket, all this other stuff, right?
I do my best.
You're humble. You're humble. But yeah, it's a thing that we've been dealing with, and we really want to drive home the point that you have to have these conversations,
right?
And you can't be afraid of them. Fear stops you.
Right.
Misconception will stop you, and it'll stop the unity that we want to have in Kansas City.
Yeah. And I would say to our listeners that we really need to have a humble posture.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot we don't know.
Yeah.
And in this particular arena that we're in, you're going to come across a lot of preconceptions and misconceptions, and it takes time to sort them out. I think I've told you this story, Ray, but I'll tell our listeners that one time when I was dealing with some kind of a sickness that kept me home for a couple of days, I was flipping through the TV, so you can tell how long ago it was, because people don't usually use cable now at all. I was trying to find something to watch. I stumbled across the History Channel, and I watched the first of a 4-part series that was talking about the time period following the Emancipation Proclamation and the 100 years that followed that period. Sometimes they're referred to as a Jim Crow era.
Right.
Well, I'm watching this documentary, and my eyes are being opened, to be honest with you. I knew some of the things they were referring to, but not all of them. I knew some of the terminology, but not all of them. And to my horror, I learned a lot about things I had never heard of before, like Black Wall Street and others, a multitude of them, actually. And while I was growing up thinking that things were improving, in the 60s and 70s, before everything kind of really broke out, they weren't improving much at all. In fact, in some ways, I think we had regressed. And so I watched the first one and shed some tears, and then I thought, okay, I'm going to watch all 4 of these, and I did. By the end of it, there were times I was laying on the floor watching them. Times I just was honestly sick at my stomach. And I thought, how did I not know these things? How did I grow up I did grow up in Alaska, so you may want to give me a little bit of a pass.
Yeah, you were kind of out of...
I was north of a lot of the troubling times, but it made me aware of this truth. This is the truth I wanted to bring out. It made me aware that there's a lot I don't know. And in that part that I don't know is probably behind what some people are saying when they talk, or feeling when they're expressing their feelings. And it made me just more humble to say, I really need to study more, read more, ask more questions. I made a determination that I've kept from that time till now to regularly read books about racial harmony, and everything from Martin Luther King's sermons to just books on church history that reflect poorly in some of the decisions that whites have made in the past on how that affected even the reason we have primarily a separated black church than a white church on Sundays. And there are reasons for all of that.
Yes.
And they're sad.
Yeah.
And so I would just say we need to be learners. We need to be humble. We need to keep pursuing those things that we don't know if we want to be able to be people that can be peacemakers.
Right. I've always felt if we could go back and start over in the educational system about history of America, especially during the Jim Crow era, there would be an awakening for our country.
Man.
And, let's just talk about one more quick. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
We'll talk about one more quick one, and then we'll go ahead and end our podcast. But this is something that has become really a polarizing statement, and it's when people go, well, I don't see color.
Yes.
What do you think about that one?
Well, I've never said it, but I've heard it.
Right.
Right. And I think that sometimes when people say that, they actually are trying to say, I really want the best for both of us. I'm not going to treat you different because you're a different color. Mm-hmm. But it's really an unfortunate statement because I don't think it's true.
Right.
I think
they're
lying.
Obviously see.
Unless they're seeing in black and white, they are seeing color. And I think it's demeaning, to be honest with you, because I feel like that if I see, we have an admin assistant who works for us named Jasmine, who's Hispanic.
Right.
So when I see Jasmine, I want to honor the culture that she has.
Yes.
I don't want to act like it doesn't exist. We have a good friend named Samantha who does a lot of contract work for us.
Yes.
Who's from Asia, from Hong Kong specifically. And I want to value the fact that she brings an Asian heritage into the room. I don't want to act like I don't see it. Like, to me, it feels like it sends exactly the wrong message.
Yeah. So if you don't see color, then are you saying that you see me as white or, neutral or see-through or whatever? But it does ignore culture. It ignores background, idiosyncrasies, food, music. It ignores a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of those deals where people, like you said, are kind of trying to build a bridge by saying, look, I'm not one of those people, those haters.
Right.
but it is very insulting to people of ethnic backgrounds because it basically says that you don't want, and we just talked about this. If you want to make sure that you make some of these verbal miscues, then just completely ignore people's background and history.
Right.
And then you will say something eventually that is jacked up.
Right. Well, if I put myself in your shoes, Ray.
Okay, you can.
So someone says, your shoes are bigger than mine, by the way.
They are.
You have some pretty big feet. So if I put myself in your shoes and someone says, I don't see color as a black man, how would that make you feel?
Well, I would not, because and this is important too, because sometimes people borrow offenses that really aren't theirs. But I would be offended because I want you to see my color.
Of course.
I want you to understand, talk to me about, well, Ray, how were you raised? And what kind of school did you go to? And what kind of jobs have you? What has shaped the way you are?
Right.
To say that you don't see all of that, because that's a big part of who I am. There's a whole bunch of good things and bad things that have happened to me because of my color. And if we're going to really build a bridge with one another that is based on relationships and talking and understanding, then you've just cut off a whole big chunk of the cake and thrown it away.
Yeah.
And so
there's a beauty in the culture, the food, the pigmentation of your skin, the kind of hair you have. All of those things are, I think, valuable and make you a beautiful person, like we talked about before when you say, we're all, made in the image of God.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to say God's white. I'm actually trying to figure out why there isn't any more pigmentation in my skin. You know, why did I get white skin and white hair? Like, what's up with that?
The whole
is that supposed to be a good thing?
Right.
I just feel like when you say I don't see color, you're actually like wiping out what makes the other person the best part of who they are.
Right. And you know, it's really trying to take a shortcut to what needs to be a journey.
Yeah,
you know,
that's so good.
And
so good.
You know, when you see a person's color, you may not understand a whole lot of things, but trying to sit down and say, hey, can you explain to me this? Or I heard this in the news. Is that true?
Yeah.
Or, you know, hey, this is probably a misconception on my part, and you know what? It's not just one way. It's not just white people who have misconceptions about black people and Hispanic people. We have misconceptions.
Yes.
And, you know, I've talked to a number of people in my community, and I said, I hate to tell you this, but you're just wrong. That's crazy talk. You know, you have obviously not talked to anybody white in a long time or something like that. Yeah. So, at any rate, it's a thing that we have to watch out for, and that we all have to be aware of, is that there are certain words that can divide us, but what can unite us is us actually sitting down and talking to each other, which if you look at the secret sauce of Unite KC, that's where we want to get everybody to.
Yep. So go have that cup of coffee.
That's right.
As you say so many times.
That's right.
And so as we're putting a cap on this, I would say also, you don't quit trying.
Right.
I've heard many white people say, I'm just done trying.
Yeah.
Like, I've tried and it didn't work, and I must have said all the wrong things or done all the wrong things, and I feel like I'm more misunderstood and rejected than before. Well, I mean, that's a cop-out in my mind. Because as long as we're alive, there's opportunity.
Right.
And also, if you can develop a good friend of a different color, different nationality, different culture, it will help you to understand the nuances of the things we might trip over if we don't have a good friend. So I need a friend like you to help me in my life so I'm more culturally aware. And if I do that with other friends of other cultures, then I will probably stumble less and succeed more in trying to build bridges. And that's why we have a conversation like this.
And the other side is to give grace. Right. I remember, as you know, and I've mentioned before, I went from 7th through 12th grade in like a 98% predominantly white school setting. And so there were a number of people that gave me grace because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I asked questions, and they could have been offensive to them. But they gave me grace, and they said, you know, no, that's not kind of how it is. And here we go. You know.
You're lucky if they start that way.
Exactly. But we're advocating for you all to give grace, and that understanding and the close conversations, they're going to be courageous. And so, you know, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in again and listening to Courageous Conversations. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and you might even catch an episode or two on Unite KC's website. But like and subscribe us. That's important. And then tell your friends about everything that we've talked about, and maybe you too can have a courageous conversation with someone. Gary, last word to you?
I would just say, don't give up. Keep trying.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
We'll see you later. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Courageous Conversations.
We hope you heard something that encourages you to start these conversations in your own life.
Because when we talk, listen, and learn together, we move closer to uniting people, uniting neighborhoods, and uniting KC.
And don't forget, you can find more stories, events, and resources at unitekc.org.
So until next time, go love your neighbors at all costs.